No backdrop, nothing.
Say what?
We don't have any kind of interesting backdrop.
Don't need an interesting backdrop.
Yeah, you do. Haven't you seen all these people on TV?
Hey, that's a blooper.
Here,
He's recording.
Well, hello, I'm Dr. Daryl Green. I'm at Oklahoma Baptist University, and we have a prestigious guest. They are clients that we're going to be working with at Oklahoma Baptist University. I am in the Dickerson College of Business, and we have been working for businesses since I've been here since 2016, 2017. Jessilyn and Andre Head have been part of that beginning. And so they are actually going to be working on a project with my students this semester. And so this is like an overview. This is kind of to whet your appetite. They are dynamic. They are incredible. They are amazing. And they are my friends. And so I just want to welcome you. Hello, how you doing, Heads?
We're doing okay.
we're doing well.
You guys are in Paris. I want to see if I can put this up right quick. I'm going to see how my technology is.
We know that'll be excellent then.
Look at that beautiful couple. That just makes your heart, man. This makes me just look. That is just powerful. And we say, Bible says, "Where two or three are together, them there you are in the midst of a meeting Christ." And I just want to thank the Heads for being there. So let's have my students get to know you guys. So tell us a little about yourself.
Ladies first.
Well, we want to thank you, Dr. Green. You have been such an integral part of us. And we so appreciate the support that you have offered for us through your students, through your own expertise. We've had many a session where we've just been sitting at your feet gobbling up information. And so we appreciate this additional opportunity to take advantage of your skills, et cetera, all your knowledge base through your great students. And we're looking forward to the cooperation and the collaboration. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Checks in the mail. Checks is in the mail.
Excellent. You can just hand deliver it, you know.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where, first of all, where you guys are from, and your kids. What are you doing? Just let us know how you grew up. We just want to have a family, like a family reunion. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Are you looking at me now, huh? Okay. Well, I was born here in Oklahoma, in a town called Guthrie, Oklahoma. But my family, we lived in a smaller town called Crescent, Oklahoma. And I am an only child. I had three wonderful ladies that took care of me: my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt. And if you've never had that type of a family, that's a different world. So, and as I grew up, and I would say that I was there for about 5 years, and then we moved to Oklahoma City.
With your grandfather.
Yes, with my grandfather and grandmother, and that's who I stayed with. That's actually who raised me, because my mother and my aunt, they were both in college and going through their educational period. And whenever they were at home, I was their child. So, I grew up in a very nice community. A lot of my elementary school classmates thought that our family was rich, but we were not. We just stayed in a very affluent community that was mixed. Both African American and Caucasian, and it was some beautiful area. I had a really interesting upcoming, and I enjoyed it. But still, most of that time I kind of did my own thing and played with myself because I was still an only child and didn't have that many friends for a while in the community. But eventually, you know, people moved into the community. And it was almost like one block was primarily, and that block could have, you know, gone for several miles, was primarily Black. And then you go over to the next block, and that block, which could go for several miles, was primarily white. So it kind of worked out like that. And but it was really a nice community. I thought it was one of the most prestigious Black communities in Oklahoma City. And you know, I went to my grandmother was my teacher. In fact, I went to a school called Truman Elementary School, and she was one of the teachers there. And after I graduated from there, I went to kindergarten in one school, but I went to Truman with my grandmother when I was in the first grade up until the sixth grade. And then I went to Webster, and then I went to high school. And I went off to high school, to Douglas High School, was there for 4 years. And then I left from there and went to Oklahoma State Tech. And at that time, I felt that school was not for me. So I actually talked to a couple of my friends, and we all joined the Navy to see the world. And we did see a part of it, but not all of it. But you know, we had a good time, and you know, I was around good people, and I was, you know, kind of, I got into a lot of artistic type things. You know, I like to get into designing and coming up with ideas. I was always, well, even when the military came up, when I talked my friends into the military, it's kind of interesting because we were sitting down one day, we were outside, and I said, you know, we should join the Navy. And they said, oh, you know, so I showed them some pictures. And I said, look at those bell-bottoms, those bell-bottom pants, aren't they cool? So that's what got them involved. So we all went to the Navy because we liked the bell-bottoms pants that they wore.
Wow. Let me ask Jessilyn, you jump in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we're going to try to make the connection between how you guys met.
Well, I too am actually from Oklahoma City, grew up here, was educated here. In fact, myself and my two brothers, there were 6 of us. Wow. But my 3 older sisters had gone away to school by the time I was in formative years, let's say. And so in the 8th grade, we left F.D. Moon Junior High School and integrated Northeast High School. Wow. And there were 7 of us. Wow. From the 8th to the 12th grade. It was a junior senior high school. Wow. And I had all manner of interesting experiences from there. But we attended Tabernacle Baptist Church, which was where I ran into this guy. After 25 years, I lived in Seattle at that time. Andre had been all over the world and had come back to Oklahoma City. I since had, well, we met after 25 years. I hadn't seen him in 25 years, but we started kind of a relationship, if you could say, early on. And then I went my way. I went on to college, and he went his way off to the service. And after 25 years, we came back together, oddly enough, reconnoitered, if you will. It was wonderful and comfortable at first sight, but I was seeing someone, he was seeing someone. After a few months, we decided that we would just see one another, but I was still in Seattle, he was still in Oklahoma City. In the interim had been a fire chief he had. I had worked in, was the director of equal opportunity at Pittsburgh State University, was the director of equal opportunity at Honeywell Marine Systems, was the executive director of a human services agency, eventually winding up in the governor's office, where I worked as special assistant to the governor.
Wow.
He had gone on, was a fireman in Edmond, Oklahoma. In fact, was the first African-American inspector there. Eventually was an arson investigator. We eventually married in 1991. He came to Seattle. He worked for the Experience Music Project. He worked for, was eventually a safety manager there. Started out in security with his background in law enforcement. Eventually was a canine with his beloved dog, Misha. They were part of a canine team that did arson, explosives.
Wow.
On cruise ships.
Thank you.
On the cruise ships.
On cruise ships. But at any rate, he became interested in genealogy through a cousin who contacted him because of his grandmother, who had told Piathan, is his name, Massey, that she had a grandson who lived in Seattle. He says, well, I live in Seattle. They got together, and that was the beginning of a beautiful seeking of history, of his own roots, as he was led to Boley, Oklahoma, which is where his ancestors had lived. He developed this interest and love in the Black towns. Because he loved it, then I came to love it as well. Wow. That brought us to our immediate quest, which is researching the history of helping the towns to appreciate their rich, rich history, helping them to preserve some of their buildings in addition to their history, which we wanted to get written and recorded, helping them to achieve a greater sense of economic development, cultural tourism, and helping to develop those towns. That led us to our mission for those 13 remaining historically Black towns. Mind you, sidebar, that there at one time were over 50 recorded, thriving Black towns and townships in Oklahoma, more so than any other state. And there are to this day 13 remaining, but from 50 to 13, that's, so what we want to do is ensure that as our grandchildren and their children are growing up, there will still be 13, and we hope thriving Black towns.
So can you talk a little bit about, you open this up about your passion. Talk about the Co-Train group. How did it get started? Kind of give us I heard part of the scope. Kind of give us a scope of the Co-Train group. What is the vision? What do you guys currently do? How did it get started? Vision and scope.
We probably started in about 2008, and we started it even before we lived here. But Andre more frequently than I, came back to Oklahoma about every 6 months. And he started initially with his interest in Boley, Oklahoma, and that spread to all 13 of the Black towns. And we have since met with the mayors of each of those towns and their town councils individually. And we've had a summit with all of the Black mayors and their town councils. And that first summit was focused on small town resources, but big town clout, under the auspices that we could do more together as a collaborative effort in seeking funding and that kind of thing than we could do separately. Because when you go forward representing 2,000, it's a lot better than 65 here, 200 here, maybe 1,500 here, including the population of their local prison. But so we started this effort to work on those projects that we could work together, gleaning more support, on working on some things individually, but that could impact all 13 towns, and then assisting them, as I said, with preserving some of their buildings, preserving all of their histories, in bringing about a sense of greater economic development, cultural tourism, that kind of thing.
So the structure, can you talk a little bit about, are you, I guess the CEO, the COO, and you know, how many employees, and do you, are you a for-profit, a nonprofit? Kind of tell us a little bit about the structure and how you guys leadership.
Well, I will start and I'll let Andre finish. Andre is the Chief Executive Officer. I am the Chief Operating Officer. Okay. We form the two employees, unpaid, non-paid, of our nonprofit corporation. Okay. There are a few people who have lended themselves and their skills and gifts to individual projects. Mostly, however, the work that has been done in most of our projects, though it's huge in scope, have been done by the two of us. Wow. Within that, we've done Colored Memories, which is a major exhibit display that was put up for 6 months at the Oklahoma History Center. We've done Historic Black Towns Salutes 13, which is a major banquet where we have 250 people gathered. We celebrate people who have done distinguished service in each of the 13 towns. It's attended by all of those mayors and their friends and friends. We've done several projects. We do the Historic Black Town Tours, where we go to 3 towns per Saturday, and we will hear from the mayor of that town. We will eat in that town. We will hear about some of their major projects, get a sense of the culture in that town, and several other projects that Mr. Head will tell you all about.
Well, you know, one thing I did want to say is that what Jessilyn just talked about, none of this was going on in Oklahoma. Of course, we have the Oklahoma History Center, which they did quite a bit of, got quite a bit of information out, but still they couldn't just concentrate on the African-American history of the Black towns because you're looking at the whole state. But we started looking at, in fact, I want to back up a little bit because I got involved in genealogy from the very start. And Justin and I were talking, several months ago, and somewhere in there, I took some kind of a right-hand turn, and we ended up, working on the Black towns. And not only the Black towns, we're even stretching into African-American history in Oklahoma. And I know my wife always likes for me to stay in my lane, and our lane was the historical Black towns. But I felt that we needed to open up that lane more because this rich history that we have is not being told. I don't care if it's the Black towns or just Oklahoma African-American history, that history is not being told. And that's why we are trying to do that. But as she said, there have been just the two of us doing it. And we're trying to get more go ahead, because I think,
Excuse me one
excuse
second.
me,
This is
that's our daughter calling.
Okay.
And we didn't, I'll even go back a little farther because we didn't talk about our kids. We have 5 beautiful kids and we have 7 grandkids and 1 great grand.
Wow.
And and another grand on the way.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of, as I said, as I took that turn, and that was because of a family member that kind of documented the history on our family. And I always talk about, when we talk about any type of history or any type of Black towns, we started from the genealogy part of it, learning about the history, because it all is tied into it. And as Jessilyn said, we didn't have a genealogy group here in Oklahoma. The closest genealogy group was in Texas and in Arkansas. So we started one. There were no tours. There's tours coming out of Tulsa once per year, but there were no tours coming out of Oklahoma City. And we had the opportunity to do 4, 5, 6 tours a year. And that has really been successful. And we're just finding out, the more and more we do these tours, the more and more we hear about people. They may have been to the town, they may have heard about the town, but they don't know the history of these towns. So that is one thing that we're trying to create, to get this information not only out statewide, but it needs to get out on a national basis, on a national level. And that's what we're trying to do.
So one of the things, I'm amazed you guys are doing so much with so little. I have my students this semester in the project management class. They're doing 3 things for you, and one of the things is a list of all these projects that you have, and I think it's very important. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. The other one is a work breakdown structure. That it's a visual of how your projects are situated. And the other one is one that has stakeholders and role responsibility. So when we talk about a project, a project has 3 things that makes a project. A project has a scope, a project has a schedule, and a project has a budget. So let's talk about the key ones that I heard you say is the historical Black Towns initiative. You have the Black Towns tours. You have the genealogy, and that's the economic development. Is there anything else? Those are the 4 that I heard. Are there anything else that's? I know you got the apps and you're doing some other stuff. What are the projects do you have going on?
We did a major renovation project of the library in Bowley, which had not been utilized for 25 years. Wow. We renovated that library with a grant we received from the National Park Service. Wow. We are renovating the Farmers and Merchants Bank, which is another grant we received from the National Trust. We did Colored Memories, as I said, and we have taken that all over the state of Washington. Many schools, we did that showed it at Langston University for their freshman orientation. We showed it at Redlands Community College. We showed it just several community places throughout the state. We did a Black Towns Then, Black Towns Now, which is a major panel composed of 5 mayors, and generally Senator George Young moderates it for us. We also had Henrietta Hicks. We also had Hannibal Johnson to moderate that panel for us. And it is a major educational tool that we have taken around the state, performed first at the end of our 6-month showing of Colored Memories. And we had over 400 people in that room to hear about Black Towns Then, Black Towns Now. We had thousands of people who came throughout that 6-month period to see Colored Memories, which is colorization of black and white photos of life in the 20s in a black town. This one happened to be Boley, Oklahoma. But it depicts them colorized. Andre was looking at one of his black and white photos and thought, what would this be like if it was colorized? We had a relative of ours who is a professional colorist.
Yeah.
She does
restoration.
Thank you. Photographic restoration is her specialty, and she did this professionally. She does a marvelous job. And so she colorized one of those photos for us. And the vividness, I mean, they actually came alive. And you know, you see black and whites, you know that it's aged just through the black and white, you know, depiction. But to see it in color, it just is so vibrant. And so we eventually colorized about 30 of those pictures, had them enlarged, put in frames, and made a display of it that we initially showed at the Boley Rodeo. This was before we had moved. We came down, put it up in the city center. And when those kids saw those pictures and thought, well, who is that? That might be your grandmother. Are you kidding? Who store was this? Where was that barbershop? Where was that bank? Where you all had all of this? Where they walked out, literally you could see them humped over as they came in, but walking out with pride, knowing that they had that kind of root, that they had that kind of history, where people were developing stores and hotels and movie theaters and their own phone companies. And, you know, and it just started a whole revival of seeking information. So we took it to the Oklahoma History Center. The director there was a friend of our parents. He fell in love with it. Then he decided to show it. And it went up for 6 months. In the major eating, gathering, meeting room in the Oklahoma History Center. And we had thousands of people over the 6-month period from all around the country who came to see those photos. And I would say that that began this regeneration of interest, of finding out more about these Black towns. From that, we created the BGRG, the Black Genealogical Research Group. Andre founded that. It now has about 50 active members who come once per month to the Oklahoma History Center. Now they get on their Zooms. In fact, there's a meeting this Saturday, Dr. Green, on Zoom. And it continues throughout the year, meeting and learning about how to search out their history, mechanisms for doing that. They've learned about all kinds of genealogical tools through which they can research their own family and family's history, going back now beyond slave days, through an additional project that we did to help people to translate handwritten histories through slave records and that kind of thing, through the Freedmen's Bureau project, translate that into print copies, which created all over the country. We were just one segment of several people around the country doing this translation, so that those records are now available through family search, so that people all over this country and others can get information from slave records, as the Freedmen's Bureau trained people, got bank accounts for people, educated people, married people officially. And so through that, they looked at the records of their family members. Who was your dad? Who was your mom? Who were your aunts? Who were your siblings? That recorded and became the Freedmen's Bureau records. All now that is digitized. But at any rate, so, through discoveries, through the Black towns, additional projects have begged themselves. And now individual towns have always gotten grants through their local COGS, communities of organizational government, or BCBG projects, community development funds to build their infrastructure and to reinforce their infrastructure, lights, streets, building of streets. But seeking outside grants is something that we hope that we have encouraged them to seek and have done some ourselves. We have 2 major projects, one of getting street signs, directional signs on all of the interstate highways. You could drive all through Oklahoma, never know that there's Black towns anywhere nearby because they're not on major interstates. No. And other than Langston, are not connected to major interstates. So we want state signs on every interstate when you're near a Black town or near the tributary that leads to the tributary that will put you in a Black town that says with an insignia, Oklahoma's historic Black towns. And there will be a star for each of the Black towns. And then when you get near one of them, it'll be a different colored star, but will say, Summit, 12 miles. And on the sign that says historic Black towns. And then when you get right up on the tributary that leads to the tributary that leads to the summit, it'll say Summit, 3 miles to the right.
That's good.
And then another directional sign that'll put you directly on Highway 62 or whatever it happens to be. Summit, 1 mile to the left. Or Vernon, 10 miles from the highway. And then when you get close to the tributary that leads to Summit, Vernon, 3 miles to the right. Or Rennisville, or Lima, or some of the unknown towns, people that we've never even heard of, many of us, most of us. You would be surprised at when we go around and name these towns. They'll say, what? Where is that? How many people, Andre will ask, know of these towns? A few hands will go up. How many of you know about the history of these towns? Hands go down. We want that to be most everybody in an audience by 5 years from now.
Wow. Well, I think that's incredible, especially looking at the Tulsa riots are going to be celebrating 100 years. Right. I think you guys are going to be so. I think my students are looking forward to this. So I'm going to ask each one of you. I hope we had more. Wish we had more time, but I'm going to ask you guys 2 questions that make you go, But I want to kind of share that. And again, my students are going to follow up. So this is the first one, and Andre, you've been kind of quiet, so we'll start with you. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a valuable piece of advice, what would you say?
Oh, 18-year-old self. I guess if I could go back to that, one thing that I wish that I would have started this process much earlier. But I understand that it seems like family is important to both of us. And it seems like, we don't think about a lot of that until we get older. Maybe it's because we get older, we get wiser. But I think if I wanted to do something like that all over again, I would just want to start early in my researching, knowing the history of the family, and at least, that may have taken me, sooner into the historical Black town, but I think it's more or less just knowing more about family, because I just didn't really start learning about family until I was in my late 40s. And I wish that I would have learned it a little faster or spent more time, even in my late 40s. If I'd have spent more time learning about family, I think that would have been a change in my life. Yeah, that's yeah.
All right, Jessilyn.
And you can tell that Andre and I have grown more similar as the years of our marriage have gone on, because I too, though I had a rich family, 5 brothers and sisters, mother, dad, who both lived to see my mother anyway, her parents and grandparents. So that means that I had the blessing of having my grandparents, my great-grandmother around. And so I know now about the richness of their heritage and their backgrounds, both on the African American side and on the Native American side. And I wish that I had, and a lot of that is written down. My sister, who recorded our history, some of which I know by rote, some of which I hope to get more as I get my hands on that. But my great-grandmother, for instance, where she came from, though I know that she was one of the first graduates of a historically Black college and university, and then my grandparents the same, and then my parents the same for their undergraduate's degree. I wish I had had the opportunity to talk more with them about their past. I wish that I had gone on and pursued a law degree, but I still talk like it. But I know that I still would have, if the Lord's grace, and I think the Lord's direction, would have wound up with his greatest gift, to me anyway, which is with Andre, and this pursuit that we are now doing. I feel that this is God's hand Amen. Over both of our lives. Amen. To enlarge the scope and the understanding and the knowledge about Oklahoma's Black towns. We didn't learn it in school because it wasn't available. We want to make certain through a curriculum project that we have now with writers and educators within a few school districts around the state to build a curriculum about Oklahoma's Black towns, because I don't want another generation to go by without as common knowledge, just as they learn about Guthrie used to be the seat and then Oklahoma City became the seat, but also there were Black towns thriving, that there was at one point an effort to make Oklahoma a Black state, that there was an effort at one time. But I want kids that look like me and Andre to grow up with the pride of knowing that we were major contributors to Oklahoma history and what roles we played. So that with my law degree.
Amen. There you go. So let me ask you this in closing. What is the one piece of advice that when you were growing up that you got that you appreciate? That one piece of advice you got from somebody that still governs how you live right now? Someone in your community, family member?
I'm gonna let you go because I want to get something that
Okay.
I'm gonna grab.
I will tell you that my dad and my mom, who were both steadfast and solid Christians, who always helped us to understand that we needed to put God first, because God owns everything in this world,
Amen.
everything in it, and everybody in it.
Amen.
And so that's the first thing. And so God is very much the center of our lives and the head of my life next to Mr. Head. But my dad also instilled within us, not so much by telling us, but by showing us that anything worth doing was worth doing well. And that in so doing, that you treat everybody with respect, whether they were brown or polka dot or yellow or, everybody he treated with respect. And so he showed us that. They both showed us that through their living. So we were members of the National Council of Christians and Jews early on.
Wow.
Dad also was one of the leaders of the sanitation strike in Oklahoma.
Wow.
So even though he was a principal and then a superintendent and then assistant superintendent of state schools.
Wow.
So we were in the governor's picnic, but we were also friends with people that worked as custodians or people so all walks of life came through our doors and were welcomed at our table and were treated with utmost respect. And so whatever we were doing, we tried to do it well, respecting the people around us, respecting the people who taught us, respecting the people who eventually we may have taught, with God as the head. And so that's the way I try to live my life.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to say, my family were all educators. My grandfather was an educator. He was a principal of a school, it was Rose Hill Schools. My grandmother was a teacher. My mother was a teacher, counselor. My aunt was a teacher. Several aunts are teachers. My great-grandmother was the first African-American teacher to get licensed in Ofuskee County in Oklahoma. And she was also a teacher when she was in Louisiana, because that's where the family generated from Louisiana.
Best place you can be, may I say? I'm sorry for injecting. Go ahead.
Former Louisiana. Remember that.
All right.
She actually taught my great-grandfather. She was his teacher. So I look at that, but I know that they would push me because they wanted me to do something, something that, or to grow up. In fact, my aunt would always say, you ran off to the Navy so you could get away from these skirts. And that's what they were called, the three skirts. But one thing that I remember, because my mother and I had conversations, and she knew what we were doing, knew about the Black Towns, and she was not, she was supportive, but she wanted to be supportive if the people in these towns were going to do something. But after she passed, I found a sign that was a frame verbiage that was on the wall, and that's it. And what it says is that how to succeed. Keep everlastingly at it. Allow nothing to discourage or deter you. Live it, sleep it, dream it. Keep on, and the goal will be yours.
Wow.
Just as a kid, my aunt would tell me that when I went to bed at night, but when I woke up in the morning, she would say, "It ain't thee. This would happen, and this, you know," and I still do that.
To this day,
I
wake up
in the morning.
The night. No, not in in the middle of the night. I say, Jeff, I've got an idea. What if we, you know, in that black town, we could be.
Amen. That's funny.
You know, I get all these visions from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Jessilyn several years ago that I almost wanted to just say, God, don't give me any more of these, because it's just, but I said, no, that's the wrong thing. Let those visions, just write them down.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, like she said, this is God's work.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we do. And we are passionate about it. And, you know, as we've been having conversations, I've come up with 2 or 3 more ideas that I can tell you about right now.
But what we want to do is to get accomplished, because it's hard for us being here in Oklahoma City, seeing it as it is now. We've been back here now almost 4 years, and, you know, we are disappointed in where we are as a race. And Seattle, which is much more progressive, it's easier to get things done there because people have a sense of working together. And together for them is a community of folk, not necessarily all that look like us, but are used to working together to make things happen. So it's hard for us to be here and not get involved in Oklahoma City goings on and politics and all that. But we are focused on, at least one of us is focused on doing things within these 13 Black towns first. And that happen. And so, you know, we've talked about 3 or 4 projects in which we're involved. We've got about 10 or 12 in which we are currently involved that we could talk with you about later or at a different time. But we need to get all those down in black and white. And when we do, we look at it and we think, what did we do all of that? You know.
We've done a lot.
But it is where we're focused at this time on these 13 Black towns, their reactivation, their getting a sense of cultural tourism as a body, as a group of towns, not just one town, but all 13 of them. And their regeneration, they're getting a better sense of their economic development and how that can occur. And getting back on, I mean, they've never been off the map. Getting on the map in more important and contributing ways.
So let me just say, what amazing. I'm the male version of Oprah, and I've been touched. I think you guys are doing some incredible dynamic things. And when you got God on your side, you can't go wrong. So I'm just happy. So as we move forward, you will be getting phone calls from my students. So if you I'm going to send it to them. If you want to shout out your contact information for them, if they want to reach you, just give them your main number and maybe a cell.
Absolutely.
Or email. Email and a main number and an email.
My main number would be area code 206-948-8852. And my email address is Andre H, that's ANDREH at thecoltrangroup.org, and that's TheColtraneGroup.org.
My main number is area code 206-949-5012. My email address, though I have been encouraged to come along and get one at thecoltrangroup.org, but my email address is rockwood, ROCKWOOD .LA@prodigy.net. And Prodigy is PROD as in doll, IG as in girl, Y.net. rockwood.la@prodigy.net. Call us anytime, seek information from us at any time. We have a website that's coming up soon. It's under reconstruction. It's coming back, but it's at thecoltrangroup.org. But then under that, you can go to hbtok.org as well and find out about the historic Black towns.
Amen. It's been a wonderful session from the Coltrane Group, the CEO and the COO, standing strong, the heads. And we're going to continue to have this discussion and dialogue. And I'm going to say good